Under the leadership of Pope Leo XIV, the Vatican is experiencing a quiet but unmistakable revival. Traditions that had faded, spaces that had fallen into disuse, and rituals once shelved in the name of simplicity are now making a graceful return. While not an outright rejection of Pope Francis' pastoral priorities, Leo XIV's approach signals a renewed interest in honoring the rich heritage of the Catholic Church. This restoration is not merely nostalgic, it's intentional. By reactivating symbolic places and traditional practices, Pope Leo XIV appears to be reaffirming the visible continuity of faith across centuries. Below are 5 key locations and traditions in the Vatican that are experiencing a notable resurgence under his young papacy. Number 5. The Sistine Chapel, where it all began. Immediately after his election, Pope Leo XIV celebrated his first Mass with the College of Cardinals in the Sistine Chapel, the site of the conclave that chose him. This moment wasn't merely ceremonial, it was deeply symbolic. The Sistine Chapel, with Michelangelo's iconic frescoes of the Creation and the Last Judgment, has long stood as a visual catechism for the Church. Its ceiling depicts salvation history in bold color and divine proportions. But more than a gallery, the Sistine Chapel was for centuries a functioning place of papal liturgy. Under Pope Leo XIV, this space is being reanimated as a living spiritual heart of the Vatican. During his first Mass, the Pope chose to use Gregorian chant and elements from the Roman canon in Latin, emphasizing sacred continuity with the liturgical tradition of his predecessors. The imagery of Christ judging the world behind the altar was especially poignant, as the new Pope offered his first homily with that awe-inspiring backdrop. Sources inside the Vatican have indicated that Pope Leo XIV intends to hold several key liturgies here annually, not just private ones, but televised for the global faithful, transforming what had become a symbolic museum back into a vital site of sacred action. Number 4. The Pallium Ceremony, a return to St. Peter's Basilica. The pallium, a narrow band of wool worn by metropolitan archbishops, symbolizes their communion with the Bishop of Rome. For centuries, the imposition of the pallium by the Pope himself in St. Peter's Basilica was a public affirmation of apostolic unity. In recent years, this ceremony became more discreet, with the woolen bands blessed in Rome but placed on archbishops later by nuncios in their home countries. The rationale was pastoral pragmatism, but with Leo XIV, the grandeur of the original rite has returned. On the Feast of Saints Peter and Paul, Pope Leo XIV presided over a restored pallium ceremony, where he personally placed the vestment on each new archbishop. The event included incense, solemn chant, and a renewal of obedience by each prelate in the presence of the faithful. This was more than pomp. It was a public declaration that the local and universal church are not at odds, but intimately woven together. Bishops received their authority not in isolation, but in communion with each other, with Rome, and with history. By reintroducing this rite in full liturgical form, Pope Leo XIV reaffirmed that sacramental symbolism and hierarchical unity are not relics. They are roads to renewal. Number 3. Liturgical calendar restorations. One of the more intricate but powerful revivals under Pope Leo XIV lies in the reorientation of the liturgical calendar to highlight solemnities and traditions that had been minimized or celebrated modestly. A striking example occurred in June 2025, when the Pope celebrated Corpus Christi not in a small-scale Mass at the Lateran, but with a grand public procession through the streets of Rome. The Pope walked behind the Blessed Sacrament under a traditional canopy, with clergy, religious, and laity processing with candles, incense, and hymns. The message was theological and pastoral. The Eucharist must take to the streets. This public witness, restored to its full form, brought back images of past pontificates, but more importantly, reminded Catholics that the real presence of Christ must not be confined to churches alone. In addition, lesser-known feasts such as the Chair of St. Peter, the dedication of the Lateran Basilica, and traditional Marian processions have received renewed liturgical focus. Liturgists report that directives have been issued to enhance the aesthetic, language, and solemnity of papal masses. This doesn't mean a full return to the Tridentine rite, but rather a noble restoration of elements that lift hearts and minds to heaven. Number 2. Castel Gandolfo, a summer retreat restored. Perhaps one of the most telling gestures of Pope Leo XIV's priorities is his renewed use of Castel Gandolfo, the papal summer residence overlooking Lake Albano. Abandoned for residential use under Pope Francis, who chose to remain in Vatican City year-round and opened the palace to tourists, Castel Gandolfo had become something of a historic footnote. But in May 2025, Pope Leo XIV made his first official visit, and by July, it was clear he intended something more. On July 13th and 20th, and again on August 15th and 17th, the Pope led public recitations of the Angelus from the palace balcony, reviving the beloved summer tradition observed by popes for generations. In his addresses, he spoke of rest not as escape, but as holy restoration. In the silence of the hills, he said, the soul can hear God without the static of modern life. He also used the retreat as a working sabbatical, meeting with theologians and curial officials to reflect on the future of the Church. There is growing speculation that Castel Gandolfo may once again host seminars, spiritual retreats, or synodal consultations, much as it did under Pope John Paul II and Benedict XVI. More than a vacation home, it's becoming a spiritual lighthouse overlooking the modern world. Number 1. Traditional liturgical elements reemerge. The most visually striking shift under Pope Leo XIV is the revival of traditional liturgical elements not seen consistently since the early 2000s. Observers have noted his preference for Roman-style chasubles, the return of the fanon, a papal vestment worn during the solemn Mass, and the use of the sedia gestatoria, papal chair, in select processions, not for spectacle, but to emphasize the dignity of the office and the presence of Christ in the liturgy. In papal masses, there is increased use of Latin, polyphonic chant, and solemn rubrics. The book of the Gospels is enthroned visibly, the cross is placed at the center of the altar facing the celebrant, and deacons proclaim the gospel with incense and acclamation. More than aesthetics, these are signs of a theology that places mystery and transcendence at the heart of worship. Pope Leo XIV has repeatedly emphasized that liturgy must make heaven touch earth, and that reverence is not rigidity, but recognition of the divine. Perhaps most tellingly, his papal liturgist has hinted that upcoming feasts will see the reintroduction of papal blessings in the traditional formula, with full pontifical solemnity. The aim, not theatricality, but to recover the sacramental imagination that nourishes faith. Pope Leo XIV's papacy is still young, but the early signs point to a clear and intentional revival of Catholic tradition. Not as nostalgia, but as renewal. By reawakening sacred spaces like the Sistine Chapel and Castel Gandolfo, reintroducing public rites like the pallium ceremony, and enriching the Church's liturgical life, he is quietly reshaping how the Vatican lives, prays, and leads. In a time of rapid cultural change, these revivals offer the faithful something firm, familiar, and beautiful. A visible reminder that the Church's past still has power to inspire its future. What place or tradition do you hope Pope Leo XIV will revive next? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more in-depth explorations of Catholic life and leadership.